Good evening. I'd like to call to order this committee of the whole meeting of the town of Saugeen Shores and extend a welcome to everyone in the chambers this evening. Our first order of business is a declaration of pecuniary interest, and I'll remind every member of your responsibility to do so. None declared. We have no additions or deletions to the agenda, so the next item on our agenda is delegations. And this evening we have two delegations, and the first is Laura Needham. She's a public health dietitian, and Jill Umbaugh, planning network coordinator for Bruce Grey Poverty Task Force, and they're talking about food security. Welcome, Laura and Jill.
Did you want to get started, Jill?
Sure. I'm just going to give a 2-second interview with everybody, but no. Introductions to the Poverty Task Force. I think a lot of you may have had information from us when we've presented at the larger Bruce Council, but for the last 4 years we have been supported by Bruce County in the work that we do. Our main focus of the task force is to facilitate community partnerships, to advocate for poverty reduction and elimination. So in the last 4 years, we have over 51 agencies across Grey and Bruce counties, social agencies, community-based organizations, people on various councils coming together and working with us to address and examine the root causes of poverty. We look at barriers to change, and together we've been identifying collective action that we can take to make change in our counties. To deepen our analysis, Laura and others have come together and formed various action groups. So the Poverty Task Force has 6 action groups right now. One of them focuses on food security, income security, housing, transportation, health equity, and then we have a Bridges Out of Poverty program. And I'm really pleased to say that we're actually doing the first Bridges Out of Poverty program here in Port Elgin, starting in 2 weeks' time. And that is a program that works with low-income people that are on ODSP and on OW in your community. And I'm really excited that we're going to be beginning this program soon. But today, we're actually here to talk about food security, and in particular, some of the work that we've been doing around policy and programming.
Okay. So I act as one of the co-chairs of the Food Security Action Group. Co-chair is Jaden Calvert at Meaford Council right now. But we are a group of all sorts of representatives, quite a few from community services. I work with public health, I'm a dietitian, and then we also try to invite all other sectors as well, including business representatives as well. And then what is food security? So the main premise that we're looking at is having a state of reliable access to sufficient quantity of affordable, appropriate, nutritious food for everyone. I'm going to quickly just skip over that. I'm sure you're all pretty familiar with the Vital Signs report from the Community Foundation, but I just want to highlight some of the stats that are most relevant to food insecurity. So we do know that 42% of our residents are not having their fruits and vegetables. 42% are having the fruits and vegetables, but that is nowhere near what it should be. And then 1,300 people in Grey Bruce were assisted with the United Way's utility assistance programs, which sounds like it's not that related to food, but when you have your choice, you have a certain amount of money in a month and you have a choice between rent and your food budget takes the hit most often. And then we do know that many of our residents are accessing food banks. Unfortunately, food banks, as important as they are and as useful as they can be as a service for many people, they don't solve food insecurity. They're not addressing the root cause. So what we're trying to encourage is more movement into situations where people are having the sufficient income they need to actually buy the food that they need, rather than relying on food charity. So, a food charter is one of the 2 major projects that I'll be talking about today. So we have our food charter and then our food assets map. The food charter we felt was needed as a group when we first started to gather together to really give us a mission and vision. We were a group of people who all worked in food insecurity, but maybe not in the same way and maybe not with the same ideas. We really wanted to make sure that everyone was coming at our food system with the same sort of idea. Our food charter isn't focused specifically to food insecurity. It also includes other elements of the food system. So we did reach out to other sectors within the food system, including the private sector, and just consumers as a broad category. So we got some good feedback from people about the different values that they have. And at the end of the day, we ended up with 6 core values to represent what we want in a food system. They are health, social justice, culture, education, sustainable economic development, and environment. And then in your package, you should have actually received the food charter. That looks like this. Okay, that's great. And you'll notice when you're going through all these different values that beside it, there's some different action items. One of the questions I tend to get a lot from the municipalities when I'm speaking is, do we have to do all of these things? And the simple answer is no. Those actions next to it are examples. They're samples of what could be done to help an organization move forward some of those values. Not all values are going to be relevant for every person, every organization, or at least not the main priority. The point is that you can recognize that there's value in all 6 of the pillars, and then move forward with the ones that you feel the most priority with. So how we've chosen to use the food charter as an action group is with the food bank summit. So we gathered all the food banks in our area together, and we speak to them about how to make that system more effective, more affordable, and more accessible to people, and responsive. That happens every 2 years. And then with the gleaning program, I'll be talking a little bit more about that with our food asset map, but what we're trying to organize is a program across Grey Bruce, starting in specific areas, that really helps connect the food that exists in our community with the people who need it. So food that might go to waste will then be redirected to the people who need it. And then the food asset map is the other project I'll be talking about later, so I'll just save that. So right now, with our food charter, we're going out to the community and requesting that people start having a conversation about it, really reflecting, and if they feel that it reflects their values within the food system, to endorse it. So, what endorsing means, there's no financial or human resource commitment as a result of endorsing the charter. It's really about recognizing that the food system does have a role in our communities, and the decisions we make, even if they're not directly related to food, can have an indirect impact to our food system. So taking a step back and asking, is this affecting our food system? Is this maybe affecting someone's food insecurity, someone's job insecurity? So that's what that means. So far, we have endorsements organizations, Grey County, Grey Highlands, the older version of this presentation. We have a few more from Northern Bruce Peninsula, and also Bruce is not up there, and
Southgate.
Southgate.
Oh, it isn't.
Perfect. Okay, so the one you have.
But a lot of the municipalities right now are using that as a way to engage with new business coming in, systems. It's a really excellent way to engage as well when you're looking at visioning on how you want the system set up to support the people in the community. The fact that the food banks have been the go-to place for food for people on low income, we want to change that. We want those people to actually access other systems, whether it's connecting with fresh produce from a farmer that's got excess, or whether it's connecting to community gardens that are good for mental health, but also they can access fresh food. So there's also a big emphasis on changing the cultural way that we treat people who don't have food. So rather than looking at a charitable situation all the time, where just go to the food bank once a month, get food for 1 to 3 days, it's not good enough, we think, for the people in our communities. We believe that they need better access to food where they're more involved in the food system than just getting dry goods at the food bank. We have an increase of 21 food banks in our area. That's not a good thing. And so we need to change the way in which we do business when we talk about food security, rather than just saying, well, we'll give at the food bank. We still believe that that emergency food bank needs to be there when people are at the height of a crisis. But we're seeing now people that are working now going to the food bank because of the lack of income and the lack of resources that they have. So that's not good for our community.
That's the kind of food security slant to. I did mention the other pillars. So a lot of municipalities are already acting on that. It's pretty efficiently. For culture, a lot of us have some celebrations included in our festivals, events. Education. There's a lot of community gardens. I know there's some community gardens in the area, and they can really help with education, bringing everyone together for that purpose. There's land use planning, where we're protecting agricultural land. And then economic development. I know there's a lot of food producers and different food businesses that are involved in Grey Bruce economic. So most municipalities are involved in that in some way. So the elements are already often there for municipalities. This is just meant to put that vision forward. And now, for the asset map, this is a more recent project, so it's actually still under construction. It will continue to be under construction as long as our food system keeps changing. It's not likely to stay the same. So I've heard we don't have internet access, so I won't actually be able to show it to you but basically our objectives of the asset map were really to build those connections in the community, understand what's out there, what's going on, who's involved in food insecurity right now, what are they doing. We want to highlight some of the best practices for the different actions. Also build an understanding so that we can find out who has extra food, who has food, geographically looking at who's close. This distribution can be sometimes Then also, we conducted a survey. So in that survey, we were able to identify the needs of food organizations, programs, to find out how we could build that food security, which extends beyond household food insecurity, which was the definition I gave you earlier, that talks about affordable food and goes into, is this a sustainable system? Do we have control over the food system? The realm of food sovereignty. So, and then also, I mentioned food business. We partnered with Grey County GIS Services for this project, and then get them on the map. We 4 different surveys, some for communications, a different one for businesses, a different one for food banks. So we could collect the information that would be relevant to each sector without bombarding them with a whole bunch of information. And once that survey was circulated, we started building the map and filling in. We're still building that map. Build out a fair bit, but one of my projects is so that will have to happen. The school in our communities has a student nutrition program, which is fantastic, but we need to make sure that people are aware of that so that they know they can support it if they're volunteer. Know it exists to do that. And then we are also, through the survey, able to have some one-to-one face-to-face conversations with people and really explore that map. What's nice about it is if you don't see something there that you feel needs to be there, there's a little form at the top center that you can, or link to a form that you can click on, and whatever information you then we can go back and fill it out further. Make sure it gets onto the map. An evergreen document. And so our next steps are to continue to populate that map and make connections, especially with the businesses in our area. And then we're going to continue building partnerships and cleaning program. And the cleaning program is the second harvest meeting.
One of the exciting things just quickly about what Laura's talking about is the ability to come together. We've had counselors, we've had food banks, we've had the health units, we've had the community health centers all come together in a local forum with people on low income and talk about food security and discuss this charter and see how it applies to them. And I really love the fact that it's not just simply us coming and giving a lecture on what is food security. It's talking about how do we work in the community. And I know with experience with Sharp that was working in the community here, we're talking more than just community gardens and some things. We're really looking at how do we change the whole perspective on how we feed people in our community.
We're not expecting an endorsement tonight. I'd appreciate it if you could consider the document and have a discussion and maybe ask us some questions.
Thank you, Laura and Jill, for the presentation. It's great. Questions? Councillor Mike Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation, both. One of the lines in your presentation that struck a chord with me was the 17% of Grey Bruce children under the age of 17 are living in poverty. That struck a chord, and to me, that's 17% too high. Wouldn't that be nice to be a lot lower? But the question I have relating to that number, how did you come about reaching the 17% number? Where did it come from? How was it done? Secondly, it's a two-part question, if you don't mind. Was the number broken down further to a local level? In other words, can we assume that 17% would be Saugeen Shores? I know it's Grey Bruce, but did you break it down further to give us a local number, or is that available?
I could tell you that this is taken from census data. We can't. I don't know specific for Saugeen Shores. It is an average of 17% across both counties. So I would have to take a look at it to see if it dealt. Generally, it doesn't go deeper than the county level data. I do know that part of the work that we're doing also with the county on our Bruce Grey Data Sharing Information Collaborative, BG DISC, is trying to get data below the county level data, and that's one of our frustrations with the census data. But you could probably take, I would say you're probably under 17%, given that there's usually a lesser difference in terms of population and poverty in Bruce County as compared to Grey County. But 17% is a general number that's being used for Grey and Bruce, and that's what's come out in StatsCan for the county level. So we'd have to check and see if there's other data on Saugeen Shores. But it's a good indicator that you're probably somewhere between 14 and 17%.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Minaj.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the darndest things is to understand whether we're Bruce Grey or Grey Bruce. Can somebody try and solve that for us one day?
Which one was I saying?
Well, there's both in your presentation. And
Yes.
I don't have any problem with that, honestly. I just wish that one day the counties could get together and make a final decision that everything is either Bruce Grey or everything is either Grey Bruce. One of the two.
I've been taught to say Bruce County and Grey County. Okay. Two separate counties, not one merged together.
So I'll get to my point about your program, and I thank you for the presentation. And I wasn't sure that I started to think about it, and Saturday night, I managed to hit a deer, and I happen to know that there's an overabundance of deer and turkeys and Canada geese in our community and around our community, and there's an underabundance of fishermen and hunters and providers. So somehow I feel like there's an opportunity for some sort of nonprofit organization to get together, but I'm sure there's all kinds of health and food regulations that you have to go through before. So just let me extend that, and my thought is that I walk around the community and I see cherry trees with the cherries dropping off, and I see pear trees with the pear trees dropping off, and so it goes. But is it something that I had bushel baskets of grapes and I couldn't eat them all, and they just ended up in my compost? Is it something that you are able to do legally, is to be able to take a bushel basket of grapes or pears and say, here, I offer this for other people to use?
It totally is acceptable.
Roadkill, not so much.
No, I think we should get them before they roadkill my vehicle.
And we have done some gleaning up in Tobermory when a fishing boat at one point in time, and Francesca Dobbin got a call down at the United Way and said, we've got all this fish, and a buyer failed to buy. And there was a donation. We managed to connect with somebody else who did all the processing, and people came out and volunteered at the Bay Shore in Owen Sound. And it went from Tobermory to Owen Sound to the food bank. And so that's what we want to see in this harvest. Second harvest is looking at, maybe it's in Meaford, they have empty apple orchards where somebody has completed their business. They're not selling apples, but there's a huge orchard there. And they've taken people from the Golden Town Outreach Food Bank out to the orchard to pick. And 50% of it has gone to market for sale, for money back into the food bank, and 50% was processed with the local people on low income. They got to take that home. So those are the connections that come as an example. And what we wanted to do in Ripley at the Bruce Botanical Gardens, they do similar things where you can do the production of the food and take it home. And I think there's a big issue with kitchens, production, distribution, and that's why we did the asset map, because it's not just enough to say, Dave has ducks that we're going to harvest. We're going to go help ourselves to Dave's ducks.
We wish you would.
We need to know, do we have a truck to transport? Do we have a kitchen that is a commercial kitchen to cook in? And do we have the right people that are going to be able to eat Dave's ducks? You know, so that's why we're looking at the harvest programming as one aspect of how we can make a more sustainable system.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One follow-up. So the other thing of interest was the idea of community gardens, and I don't know that we've really gone there yet, but we have a lot of passive park areas, and we've started community gardens.
Yeah.
We did, the municipality?
We haven't been within our municipality.
No, but we haven't taken that through staff and offered a passive park area that could become a community garden. So that's something that I heard you say, and that's something that I think we could look into as part of the package of whatever we're going to assemble and respond with. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. Last year, Councillor Mayette and I went to Western Michigan on an economic development information gathering trip. Yes, and one of the things that we discussed with this economic development expert that we met with was a program that they have that I'm wondering if it is part of your children's nutrition program. They have a program where they have they have farms of all different kinds, and children go and visit them, but the farms also provide food to the cafeterias in the schools, and so is that something you're working on?
Yes, so the Ontario Student Nutrition Program they did just pilot last year within 7 different schools, a system where they get local food into the school. It's not clear whether or not they're going to have the funding for that in the next year, but I do know that the schools who participated in the pilot really appreciate it and want it to continue. Is the interest from the school side. And then as far as actually connecting the thought, and it's escaping me.
Well, I'll jump in with just something while you think about that. In Grey Highlands, and just two examples, Great Highlands and Meaford, we have the community gardens connecting with the high school. So it's the high school students that are bringing food in, and they do their 40 hours of volunteerism in the summer to maintain the beds and then bring them in and do the harvest in the fall. So again, a simple connection, but not as system-wide or system-changing as getting into all of the schools. But we certainly have that, and that was part of the reason why with the asset mapping, we went out face-to-face and sat down and talked to people. We didn't just say, what do you do? It was like, what is possible? What are you interested in? Where can we make the connections? And so what we've been doing throughout, and just recently in North Bruce Peninsula, up in Tobermory, having what we called food security conversations, brings all the players together in a community, similar to what Sharp has done previously here under United Way support with community living at the Maple Building, and who else was there? Pierre Donini was part of there for the Rotary, and he still donates food regularly on a Friday for a hot meal. All of those people came together around the table to say, how can we pull together for a community garden? How can we do that? But what we like to do, what Laura's doing with the schools, is a larger system change, which I think could have significant impact.
Yeah, so and in the U.S., they do have every single school. Lucky enough to have a student nutrition, but they all run a little bit differently. Organizing that kind of thing, they don't have the capacity. There's some unique challenges that we need to. We can do the regional.
Councillor Dave Myatt.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Thanks, Laura, and thanks, Jill, for coming out. Obviously, you will know that I'm familiar with some of this stuff through my work with the United Way Board of Directors, and I appreciate the fact that you came out here today and planted the seed, so to speak, with us as to how we can further this initiative. And I just wanted to say that I will be initiating a motion shortly for our council to endorse this. So
Excellent.
Stay tuned, I'll keep you in the loop. Thanks.
Thank you, Laura and Jill.
Thank you.
Our next deputation is Enid Johnson. She's here about Light Up Your Nation Color Run. Welcome, Enid. Just press the little blue button and we'll turn your mic on. There you go.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, I'm here to talk about Light Up Your Nation Run. It is a color run. GC Houston last year, in conjunction with the Shindig, sponsored a color run at our school. It was very well attended. It was a huge success. I think we had well over 500 people that participated in the run. This year, we talked about it again if we wanted to do it, and as many of you may know, GC Houston is working extremely hard building up our community in Port Elgin and with our Saugeen First Nation community, because many of our students are from Saugeen First Nation. So we were thinking about doing a color run again. We were thinking about doing it in connection with Shindig because it just seemed to fit really well. And some of the people at the Saugeen Health Center had also done a color run a couple of years ago and had asked if we would like to partner on our color run. So we had a few meetings, and it sounded like a great idea because our interests are the same. One, we want to get children active, and that definitely is what the health unit wanted. They want to get lots of kids out, get them moving, and that's what we wanted too. And then we wanted to use it as a fundraiser to promote our playground at GC Houston. We have a huge outdoor education program that we run at GC Houston. If you've ever been to that school, you'll see that we also have an outdoor classroom. We've expanded our community garden. We want our kids to be outside. So, of course, some of those things cost money. So the color run was sort of a great idea of how to raise some funds that we can put back and improve our playground. When we met with the health unit on Saugeen, one of the conversations was originally we were going to do the run in at GC Houston and in Southampton. And then we had the discussion about, I wonder if there's a way that we can start it out in Saugeen or start it at Southampton and end in Saugeen. And through lots of sort of conversations, we decided we were going to start the run at Saugeen, just outside the health center, and then we'd end at GC Houston. It's a really... it's a great way to sort of bridge that gap, literally and figuratively, because we're going to have to cross the bridge to come into Southampton. We also were very considerate of a lot of our families would probably feel more comfortable starting out at Saugeen and ending at GC Houston. We want to make it as inclusive as possible. And we also talked about how much we were going to charge, because we really didn't want to make the cost for people so ridiculous that it would be really difficult for them to do it. So originally it was $20, now it's $25, and we're also incorporating a kids run before we do our Light Up the Nation run, and that run is free. So it's a great way to get lots and lots of young kids participating. We're starting to get more and more people sort of interested to participate. Bruce Power has said that they would like to sponsor us for something. I think they're going to sponsor us for the medals that we're going to give out. We have talked to the grocery stores and those organizations about sponsoring us for water, fruit cups, or fruit. Everybody seems really, really excited about it. We've talked to the fire department at Saugeen, and they're sort of going to take care of cleaning up after us, after the color, to sort of wipe it away off the road. And we've already talked to the Saugeen Council about using Cameron Street, which is out on Saugeen, so they're going to take care of that. Some of the other members of our committee who are not here tonight, they're dealing with the OPP, because of course we're going to have to cross County Road 13 to go down along Eckford, so they're already in discussions with that. We've applied for insurance, and that's been approved, but we just haven't got it sent to us yet, so once that comes in, we can forward that to you. It's just... I was really pleased at how successful it was last year, and I'm really pleased how successful it's going to be this year. There's lots of enthusiasm with it. I think it's a great way for us to kick off Shindig, because it brings a lot of people. I remember last year we were very worried because we thought, I don't know if we're going to have enough people. I think we only have about 100 people registered. And then, of course, on the day, just people are coming out of the woodwork. There's 400, there's 450, there's 500 people. So it was extremely successful. So I would appreciate your support with this. I think we dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's for this, and it should be great. I think every one of you should probably come out and run, walk, jog, rollerblade, whatever you want to do. But it would be great for us as a community that we all get together. Thanks.
Thank you, Enid. Questions? Vice Deputy Mayor Hubert.
Thank you, and thank you, Enid. And just for Councillor Menage's, to his question about community gardens, GC Houston this year at our spring meeting of the community garden, GC Houston took on 2 more plots, so the kids there are really embracing the whole community garden concept. I'm curious to know, though, perhaps this is a question for David, these road closures, would it be the town who would do some communicating with all of the residents along that route, just to let them know that this is being planned? Will the town initiate that communication? Because that to me would, I think, be a good communications vehicle, because it's a Saturday, it's all morning, and it's a pretty long stretch and a busy chunk of the community.
I think, Jane, can you?
Yes, certainly. Lisa Billing has been working closely with Enid throughout this process, similar process to what we did for the Huron Shores run. So yes, we will be acknowledging and letting all of those residents in that area know. Okay, and the Huron Shores run, I think there were some things left on mailboxes when people weren't at home, or however I remember hearing people thought that was a good idea, so good for you. My second part to that, though, is I appreciate you said you were contacting the OPP for a little bit of assistance. I'm interested in having the town consider this idea of volunteers would be positioned at Clarendon Street crosswalk to help runners cross. That's the highway, and I would like to think that perhaps the town could
show some additional support for the event by encouraging perhaps that we somehow make a crossing guard or a police officer from the Saugeen Shores Police perhaps be available there to assist, because it is a highway, and I think that that authority figure there would be helpful to the entire process, because again, it's a busy time of the year, and it is an interesting crossing, and we haven't yet fixed the crosswalk there. So is that a possibility, David, that we could consider, since it is the highway location, that it would be better served by an official crossing guard rather than volunteers?
Yeah, that crossing was also identified through senior management because there's also a bend in the road right there, and vehicles still are at 70 kilometers at that area. So we've expressed the desire to have some kind of advisory poster or something indicating as vehicles are approaching that area that it is a crossing for a race, and that there be something across that area as far as police presence. So we're still looking to see how we'll manage that, but certainly that was identified through senior management as well as a bit of a hot spot.
And we're also going to meet with Saugeen Shores Police too, just for that in particular, and also for the bridge. I mean, we are going to just use the walkway and where the bike path is, but we also know that's an extremely busy place, so we are going to meet with Saugeen Shores just about that area, because I think it could be a little bit hazardous.
Thanks.
Any further questions? If not, thank you very much, and we look forward, hope we can get all of us out there and join you on the 19th. Thanks, Enid. The next item on the agenda is a general government staff report. It has to do with the Port Elgin BIA funding agreement, and I believe our Mark is going to present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In front of you tonight, there is a report to establish an agreement with the Port Elgin BIA for the funding repayment that the town entered into with the Port Elgin BIA 2015 and 2016. There was a project to replace decorative lighting in the downtown core, and it is working. The money's been there, but we just need to close that loophole by having an agreement in place. It will be extending over this term of council, and it's best to have these in place just so that everybody is aware of the terms and conditions. So that's what this is all about.
Thank you, Mark. And I'll read the recommendation. We'll take some questions. It's recommended that council pass a bylaw to enter into a funding agreement with the Port Elgin BIA for repayment of the decorative street lighting on Goddard Street in Port Elgin. Questions, comments? No, I think it's a great idea. We understand where we all are on this, and everybody involved knows. So, if no further questions, all in favor of the recommendation? Opposed to any? That's carried. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the dedication of Saugeen River Bridge, and I believe there's nobody here from Public Works, so I'll tell you this is pretty short. Everybody, I'm sure, has read it. I think we've had a presentation from GC Houston on this. So I'll read the recommendation that council pass a bylaw to recognize and officially name the bridge in Southampton on Highway 21 over the Saugeen River as Bimwadson Good Path Bridge. Questions? Vice Deputy Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It mentions a sign. I think the kids from the school were interested in having banners too representing the 7 grandfather teachings. Do we have to do anything special to enable that? Because that was part of their request, I think, to the provincial government too.
I'm not sure, but I'm sure Amanda will have this well in hand. Any further questions? All in favor? That's carried. The next item on the agenda is a planning and development staff report, and it has to do with the site plan for Mackenzie Street mini storage, and I believe Jay Bosner will present.
Yes, this is a expansion to the existing mini storage business. You'll recall that we sold this property recently to the same storage business operator, and that they also, if you recall from the minutes of a recent committee of adjustment, they got a side yard setback reduction to help facilitate a more efficient use of the land. So this agreement is a drawing that shows the main features of the agreement highlighted in gray. So 3 new buildings totaling about 1,500, just under 1,500 square meters of new storage space, and additional outdoor storage that the developer intends to use. And we've addressed the issues where we feel it's the most efficient use of the land, that the agreement secures the buildings in a timely way staged over a few years, and improves stormwater management locally in the area.
Thank you, Jay. Then the recommendation that a bylaw be passed to authorize a site plan agreement with Mackenzie Street Mini Storage Incorporated. Any questions to this? All in favor then? That's carried. And the next item on the agenda, again, is a planning and development report, and it has to do with removal of a holding provision for 362 McNabb Street. And again, Jay will present the report.
So you've seen one of these recently, I think last month. A holding provision prevents the construction of any buildings on the property. So the landowners, or Derek Seaman on behalf of the landowners, have applied to lift the holding provision. And as we learn more about the history of the holding provisions, I have discovered that more and more we already have the tools that can help regulate the use of the land in a safe manner. In this case, the holding provision, from what we can tell, was originally provided to help ensure that the development, because it's sort of a steeper slope throughout that site moving to the west and then eventually into wet area, that it was properly regulated by control from the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. They've already, since the holding provision, they developed their regulation, and we've incorporated into our process that before any building permits issued, the SVCA approves the site plan. So this sort of removes the red tape in it. If I can just add that as we learn more about the tools that we have, when we do a more comprehensive mapping exercise, we can remove a lot of these holding provisions so people don't have to pay to do it.
Thank you, Jay. That the recommendation is that a bylaw be passed to remove the holding provision from zoning bylaw for the lands located on 362 McNabb Street. Any questions to this? All in favor? That's carried. So the next item on the agenda, I believe, is on here. As a Community Services Parks and Recreation Staff Report, and it has to do with the capital project at Goddard Street Streetscape, Coulter Parkette. And our Director of Community Services will present.
Thank you. This evening we're seeking approval to award CSL Group Limited with the contract for Coulter Parkette. I've provided you in your report this evening the scope of the work within the project. Staff have worked with the Port Elgin BIA in assisting them through a consultation phase. CSL Group Limited has provided provisions for the additional amenities of a water feature and a pavilion as requested by the BIA. And staff is requesting $17,655 be funded through the Parks Reserve to offset the original project scope. BIA will provide financial resources for the added amenities, and staff will work at ensuring that these costs don't escalate. And I've provided you the financial impact within the report.
Thank you, Jane. Then the recommendation is that CSL Group Limited be awarded the contract for the Goddard Street Streetscape Coulter Parkette tender number 2017-02 6740-5705 in the amount of $218,155 plus applicable HST, and that an additional $17,655 be financed from the Parks and Recreation Parks Reserve, and that the provisional cost for the water feature and stage shelter pavilion be approved conditionally upon funding being approved by the Port Elgin BIA, and that the Mayor and Clerk be authorized to sign the necessary tender documents. Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to be clear on the financing of this one, just so I'm real clear. The quoted price of $218,000. Obviously, we don't have that much money, right? We have $187,000. So staff's view is that this work can actually be done for $30,000 less than quoted. Is that the case? Am I understanding that correctly, or am I misunderstanding it? If I am, tell me how I am.
I'll maybe say it a different way.
Okay.
I presented to you during 2007 capital declarations, $145,000 for the project. It came in at an additional $17,655. That did not include the additional work of a pavilion and of a water feature. That work has given provisions through this contract at $52,500. What I'm saying within the report, that staff is confident that we can get those prices lowered from what the contractor has provided for provisions. So within that report, additional $17,655 is required to come in at the project that was presented to you during the 17 deliberations. Does that make sense?
So what you're saying is then the water feature and the pavilion, I guess that's the right word, the pavilion and the water feature, are, the quote in there is higher than you, for those two features in particular, is higher than you think it necessarily needs to be, and that will ultimately come in or at closer to what the BIA is putting on the table to fund those two features.
Staff will work at getting those prices lowered, and that may mean a phased-in approach. It may mean that we do the water features this year and the pavilion in the spring, but we'll work with the BIA to make sure that that's a reasonable price and within their budget and scope as well.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Mike Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly support this recommendation. I wanted to thank everyone involved. There were a good number of staff involved with this project with BIA. Coulter Parkette is being transformed into something that's going to be pretty special downtown Port Elgin, and I think we're around this council table of some of the neat things that are happening down there, whether it's the farm to table or the farmers market every Wednesday, the Tragically Hip concert, Shoppers Nights events, Easter petting. There's a whole, and the list goes on. That's being transformed into a pretty neat facility for Saugeen Shores residents, right in downtown Port Elgin, Coulter Parkette. So the other thing we need to be reminded of is that the BIA will be contributing $25,000 towards the pavilion and the water feature. So, and I was speaking to our Director of Community Services earlier, and Jay, maybe just for the benefit of council, that $52,000 for the water feature and the shelter, I believe the desire, as you mentioned in the report, is to try and drive that number down the best we can. And is there potential for a group like, I know the high school students, Bud Halpin did a wonderful job at Fair Lake recently with the docking over there, and also with the shelter, and for basic cost of the materials. And is that an option that we could present to the BIA to have an organization like that involved with building the shelter to try and drive that $52,000 figure down, Jane?
Yeah, that's certainly an option. I know there's a desire to have the project completed throughout with the contractors at the same time as the municipal contractors, but certainly that is an option to speak with Bud's class and to get in his on his agenda, because we know it's a full agenda as well, and that may mean that construction has to happen in the spring, and I'm purely speculating right now if that works in his schedule or not.
Vice Deputy Mayor Hubert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is a great space, and the creation of a wonderful place in downtown Port Elgin is a good goal to have. I'm concerned, though, that almost every tender we seem to be seeing now is coming in over budget, and we're finding money all over the place. And at some point, it would be nice if we received something that just lists all of these additional numbers that we've added on, because I think the number is getting a little bit bigger than maybe we all realize. And we spend time during budget processes kicking $4,000 projects to the curb, and then the last couple of tenders we've just added 17 here, 25 here, whatever. And we seem to be finding this money somewhere, but we can't find money during the budget process when we're really discussing things. I am curious, though, about this particular request, because I appreciate what you're saying, Jane, about how, they're going after, at the end of August, they're going to talk about $25,000, but the contractor said 52, and, we'll work towards some. What if there isn't negotiation there? But you don't have to answer that. I'll just hope that it happens. I would like to know, though, it says that this extra $17,655 would come from the park reserve. I went back the last couple of days and tried to find which reserve account we had applied the splash pad donations to? Was it the park reserve too? Which reserve fund did the, I think it was 75 and 30, so it was about $100,000. Which reserve fund did they come out of?
I believe that was the Parks Reserve as well, but I'll get confirmation for you.
Well, if it was, there is no money in the Parks Reserve. So I would suggest that we go take a good look at it, because with what we were doing this year, we had we had about $232,000 in the Parks Reserve at the end of 2016, and then we took $145,000 of that out for this project, which would leave about $87,000. And then if we're taking another $17,600 out of this, that brings us down to about $70,000. And we've allocated about $100,000 to 2 other projects. So I'm just, we've talked a number of times at budget. So I'm just, that part just is worrying me. It's like, I think we're about to completely deplete.
Well, I think we can ask, ask finance for a report on those reserves and an upgrade after that. I think. Sure. Okay. I think we can. I think that's appropriate.
The numbers are,
It's kind of. I know that it would be unfair to ask him for it tonight. He won't have it at his right here. So I think if we want some accurate figures, we can bring those back in another report. Thanks very much.
I would just note that there is still about $9,000 sitting in a reserve that's associated with Port Elgin Streetscape, I believe. So perhaps that reserve fund could be used for some of this work because it's downtown. But we also had a downtown cost center too. So it's just, it just seems that it would be good if we were working towards consolidating things in one place. But I just don't want to have us deplete entire reserve funds without knowing that we're doing it. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Minaj.
Well, it's no surprise to anyone that I was involved on council many years ago putting this Coulter parquet together. And I asked Jane if there was going to be a name change. I understand that there is not going to be a name change, which is good news to me. But I'd be happy if there was a name change as long as Coulter was in there. So at some point I had heard the BIA speak of wanting to change the name from a parquet to a plaza. But right now it's still a parquet. Is that correct?
There's been no discussion in regard to naming the change at this point.
And thank you. And Mr. Mayor, clearly this is a community. This is a downtown community parquet. And as much as I supported the BIA and continue to support the BIA, I would have always wanted the community to have identified all their needs. So some of the needs are simple. The current pedestal for the plaque that honored Bill Coulter, the CAO of the municipality of Port Elgin at the time, is now sitting on a pretty beat-up looking wooden contraption. So my hope is that you have a plan to improve the plaque and the pedestal for the plaque. I don't see, there's a lot of information here, and I know this is cold water and it's at the 11th hour, and I apologize for that. But if I take away the pavilion, and if we couldn't afford it now, and we take away the water feature, what's left for me is digging it all up and reconcreting it, taking all the interlocking brick out for the money we're going to spend, and going back with a raised curb, a non-barrier curb. Is Amanda okay with that, Jane, that we can go without the barrier curb? Because lately she's been telling me that she's really interested in her liability issues with respect to what we do in the municipality, including those left turn areas. So if she's okay with it not being a barrier curb that close to pedestrians and sidewalks, then I'm okay with that. The road noise there, whenever we've tried to hold a speaking session, we're not very good at it, in my opinion. We have microphones and we have speakers, and we're just not using them well. So my hope is that there's enough electrical supply to this area that that would be conducive to some pretty decent speakers and a microphone system in the pavilion if we get there. So I don't see things like that in here, and maybe I missed it at budget time, and I apologize for that too. One last item, well, there's two actually. Where is the Christmas tree supposed to go? Something that we should consider, and whether or not we're going to go with a permanent installation as did Southampton, or whether we're still going to bring in cut trees every year. Obviously, the cut tree is larger to begin with than it is if we wait for it to grow. And finally, there are public washrooms really close by, and they're very hard to identify. And so my hope is that we can add some signage to this new and improved parquet that clearly identifies where the public washrooms are. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any further questions? All in favor of the recommendation? That's carried. So, the next item on the agenda is communications, petitions for committee of the whole information. There's 6. Oh, did I miss something? Oh, yeah, sorry. One other is Community Services and Parks and Recreation staff report, and it has to do with the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail Extension. And again, our Director of Community Services will present it.
This evening, we're looking for approval from Council for the municipality to participate in the extension of the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail. This was discussed with you in 2017 when we presented budget. The Great Lakes Waterfront Trail expansion will go through Huron, Grey, and Bruce counties and through Manitoulin Island and up to Espanola. The nice thing, the good story about this is the cycle tourism, and in 2014 I provided you some of these numbers in the report, but 25% of the cycling visits in Ontario were in our region, which is RTO7. That equates to approximately $107 million for Grey, Bruce, and Simcoe counties. The costs associated within this report in this project are minor. What they're looking for is to secure funding for the inaugural wayfinding signage. However, the municipalities are responsible for supplying the signage for the hardware. So they will provide the first signs. We will install the signs on some of our hardware that we already have and purchasing some additional posts as well. The partnership, which is really important, it's a partnership that will promote Saugeen Shores as a cycling destination, and it supports the municipality's work to becoming a bicycle-friendly community. And this is something that Community Services certainly has been working towards. I've included in the report for you the financial impact as well.
Thank you, Jane. And let me see here. The recommendation is that the town of Saugeen Shores advise the Waterfront Regeneration Trust that it wishes to participate in the extension of the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail, and that the town agrees to supply the hardware and labor for the installation of the required Great Lakes Waterfront Trail signage on roads and trails which are under the municipality's jurisdiction. Any questions to this report? Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Jane, this is great. I brought this up 2 years ago about making Saugeen Shores a bicycle-friendly community, and we're working towards that. I think it's the REACT committee will be bringing a motion sometime soon to council about having that declared. But what we have to do then as a community is to start to look at bicycle-friendly activities and processes to get it actually bicycle-friendly. We have to start looking at some roads that need to be redesigned, the 10th, South Street. You know, we have to get roads that are going to bring people here. This trail is going to be great, but we have to make Saugeen Shores bicycle-friendly, and we're far from that. So, as I said, shortly the REACT committee will be asking council to designate the town a bicycle-friendly town. Then actually become a bicycle-friendly town, we're going to have to take some steps to become that. So I look forward to this, and I hope council will help support that.
Thanks, Councillor Madison. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you, Jane, for your work on this. I think it's a great bargain.
Councillor Dave Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jane, is there a sample of what the signage is going to look like? I'm just thinking back to our days on the Parks and Trails Advisory Committee, and we spent many minutes going over the branding and the types of signage and the positioning of signage, and it's not as simple and straightforward as one might think. And so do we have an idea whether these are going to be somewhat compatible with our current branding, or whether they're going to be take over from our directional signage, and how it's going to interact with all that work we did previously?
They are not like our current signs. Excuse me. They are their own identity, their own signs. And if you can imagine, these signs start at the Ontario-Quebec border and come all the way down the St. Lawrence and around all of the Great Lakes and up to north. And they are not like any other community sign because they are identified strictly for this trail. They are situated about every 2.5 kilometers on both sides of the road. So if you're a cyclist and you're doing a long duration of a trip, it makes sense because those are the signs that you're looking at. Go through each county. Each county should not have their own definitive sign. That's why it's important that all of these signs are the same within this program itself.
But could you get us a copy or an idea of what the signs look? Are they written signs, or are they sort of pictographical?
Yeah,
in
they're
nature?
a little bit of both, actually. There's
Okay.
a logo on each one of them, and it identifies the name of the trail. So I can certainly send that to all.
Yeah, if you've got something handy, that would be good. Thank you.
Any further questions? All in favor? That's carried. Now, the next item on the agenda is communications petitions for committee of the whole information. We have 6 items there. The first one, I will remind everyone that the August 14th regular council and committee of the whole meeting will be canceled. Any questions on any of those? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question, I guess probably for our CAO about the letter from AMO about the Waste Free Ontario Act. And it's very interesting. I wondered, is it too early to tell us anything about how we might be responding to this initiative?
I think you're probably, yes, this thing is in a fluid situation. They've changed a whole bunch of requirements. So we do have at the county, all of our public works directors meet with waste diversion, and these ideas are discussed there. I think probably if you want to discuss it with Amanda, but I know all of the household hazardous waste has changed substantially about how they funded it and what we can accept. So this is part of the step, I think, where they're saying it's going to the producer's responsibility, which really means the consumer, because you're the one that's going to pay for it. But yeah, I hope that answers your question. Okay. Any further questions? And then take a motion to adjourn. Deputy Mayor Charbonneau and Councillor Madison, all in favor? We'll take a 10-minute break.